The Bible Summarized. The Book of Genesis, chapters 12 through 25. Abraham, Isaac, and the birth of Jacob and Esau. Chapter 12. God told Abram to leave his land, his father's house, and his relatives to go to another land that God would show him. He promised to make Abram a great nation, to make his name great, and to bless all the other nations on the earth through him. Abram obeyed. During a famine, Abram took his family to Egypt and told his wife Sarai to say she was his sister. Pharaoh took Sarai, but God sent plagues on him. When Pharaoh found out that Sarai was Abram's wife, he gave her back and sent them away. Chapter 13. After leaving Egypt, Abram and Lot and their families settled together in Bethel. But the land could not support all of them, so strife arose between their families, and they decided to separate. Lot moved to the Jordan Valley near Sodom. God told Abram he would give him his own land and multiply his descendants. Abram settled for a time in Hebron by the oaks of Mamre. Chapter 14. In the lands near Sodom and Gomorrah, 5 kings joined forces against 4 other united kings. The kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled from the opposing kings, who took Lot and his family captive. When Abram found out, he and his people rescued Lot. Melchizedek, the king of Salem, came to Abram and blessed him. Abram gave Melchizedek 1/10 of all his possessions. Chapter 15. God came to Abram and again swore to give him an heir, to multiply his descendants and to give him his own land. He told Abram his descendants would one day be taken captive by another nation, but after 400 years he would bring them out and back into their own land. Chapter 16. Abram's wife Sarai was old and barren. She gave her maid Hagar to Abram, and Hagar became pregnant. Sarai became jealous, so Abram allowed Sarai to send Hagar away. She fled, but an angel came to her and told her to go back and that God would bless her child. She gave birth to her son Ishmael when Abram was 86 years old. Chapter 17. When Abram was 99 years old, God swore again to him that he would bless him with land and descendants. God changed his name to Abraham and his wife's name to Sarah, and God commanded him to be circumcised, along with every male member of his family, as the visible sign of the covenant. Abraham did as God commanded. Chapter 18. The Lord came to Abraham, appearing to him as 3 men. Abraham invited them to a meal, and they accepted. The Lord promised that in the spring he would return, and Sarah would have a son. Sarah overheard the conversation and laughed. The Lord asked Abraham why Sarah laughed. She denied it in fear. 2 of the 3 men departed, and the one who remained told Abraham he was going to destroy Sodom. Abraham pleaded for mercy for Sodom, and God promised that if he found even 10 righteous people in the city, he would not destroy it. Chapter 19. On arriving in Sodom, the 2 men found Lot, who urged them to stay with him. The men of the city stormed Lot's home, attempting to rape the 2 visitors. Lot offered his daughters to the mob, but the 2 men struck the mob with blindness. The 2 visitors, also referred to as angels, sent Lot and his family fleeing Sodom to a nearby city. Lot's wife turned back to look as the city was being destroyed and became a pillar of salt. Lot and his daughters found refuge in a cave. Fearing they would not have husbands or children of their own, Lot's daughters conspired together, got their father drunk, and both had sons by Lot. Their descendants became the Moabites and the Ammonites. Chapter 20. Abraham and Sarah moved to Gerar. Abraham again asked Sarah to tell the king Abimelech she was his sister. Abimelech took Sarah, but before he had relations with her, God warned Abimelech, "She is Abraham's wife." Abimelech confronted Abraham, and again Abraham confessed. He lied out of fear. Abimelech gave Abraham livestock and slaves and silver and land. Abraham prayed for Abimelech and his people, and they were all healed. Chapter 21. When Abraham was 100 years old, Sarah became pregnant and gave birth to their son and named him Isaac. Again, jealousy arose between Sarah and Hagar because of Ishmael and now Isaac. Sarah drove Hagar and Ishmael away. As they were suffering from thirst in the desert, an angel rescued them and promised that God would make Ishmael a great nation. After a dispute over a well, Abimelech and Abraham made a covenant, giving Abraham the well. Abraham sojourned in the land of the Philistines. Chapter 22. God tested Abraham, telling him to sacrifice his son Isaac on a mountain. Just as Abraham was about to kill Isaac, the angel of the Lord stopped him, and again swore that God would multiply his descendants, give him land, and bless all nations through him. Abraham moved his family to Beersheba. Word came to Abraham that his brother Nahor and his wife had children. One of his relatives had a daughter named Rebekah. Chapter 23. When Sarah was 127 years old, she died. Abraham bought a field from the Hittites and buried his wife in a cave in the field. Chapter 24. In his old age, Abraham sent one of his servants to his kinsman to find a wife for his son Isaac. The servant went to the land and the family of Abraham's kinsman and met Rebekah at a well. The servant explained to Rebekah and her family that Abraham, their kinsman, was seeking a wife for his son Isaac, and asked Rebekah's family to let her go with him. He gave gifts to the family and took Rebekah. As they came near to Isaac's home, Rebekah saw Isaac in the distance and asked who he was. When Isaac saw Rebekah, he loved her, and she became his wife. Chapter 25. Before he died, Abraham married another woman named Keturah and had many children with her. When he died, his sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave where Sarah was buried. Ishmael and Isaac both had children. Isaac's sons were twins, Esau and Jacob. Isaac favored Esau, but Rebekah favored Jacob. One day, after a hunt, Esau returned home famished and asked Jacob for a pot of stew. Jacob asked him to trade his birthright for the stew, and Esau agreed to it.